have to understand what you see. You have to understand what kind of report, what kind of reading you get out of the result. I remember many years back when my wife was expecting her first child, and we went to the hospital and saw this ultrasonic picture. It was for me just blurry. I couldn't understand. Oh, look here, arms and legs. Where? Tell me, where can you see the arms? Where can you see the leg? I just saw a blurry picture. Yeah, because I don't understand what I was seeing. I was not skilled. The same thing is when you have a look at the report from a sonic device or whatever. If you're not trained, it's difficult to see. And that is, my opinion, has been the problem in the past. The reports have been very difficult to understand. The software has not really been developed so well. The question I have here, Jack, and then you have been in this industry much longer than I've been. We have today so sophisticated technologies like face recognition systems. I mean, we go to the customers. They check our face, our eyes, our thumbprint, whatsoever. But I haven't seen this transferred into our industry yet.
Yeah, I think the parallel.
Why not? Why not? I'm asking you.
The parallel to that is that we have these technologies which are used for assessing undersea pipelines, delivering gas and fossil fuels and oil to the mainland. And they're great techniques and they're very reliable and they've been there for 30, 40 years. But they cost so much money that to do a survey, do a CCTV survey, what does it cost in relation? A few million per metre. In the UK, £1.50 a metre, £2 a metre, so say 10 minutes a metre to do a CCTV survey. If you end at the other end of the scale, assessing a pipeline or the oil industry, those guys will spend $1 million on making an assessment because they've got a value product going through their lines, which justifies the expenditure. We're dealing with public sewage and clean water often. It doesn't have quite the same cash value, I think. But it's a picture, if we look at it more strategically, our underground assets are hugely valuable. When they privatised the UK's networks, 2/3 of the asset value transferred to private companies, and 2/3 of the asset was the very pipeline. The bit they had the data about, and they could tell you every single pump they owned. They had the serial number, when it was bought, the value of it, and so on. But all of those above ground structures, the processing, the sewer pumping, and all that kind of stuff, that made up 1/3 of the value, and our pipelines made up 2/3 of the value. We ought to be looking at spending more money on our pipeline network, because that's the asset we've got to invest in and look after for many years.
Yeah, we have a lot of responsibility because we have a big asset behind beneath below our surface. Thank you, Dick. Condition assessment. First of all, what is condition assessment? Yeah, that could be divided into several things. Condition assessment is, first of all, you have to look where you are located, where you're situated. Like, for instance, in this part of the world, the infiltration due to high groundwater is very common. Actually, infiltration in gravity sewer system or drainage system is normally at 60 to 70% of the failures. That is infiltration due to open joints and into groundwater. Open joints are created by many different reasons. If you look at the part where I come from, most of the open joints come from the variation of temperature in ground. Frost. You know, when you have below 20, 25 to 30 degrees C, the frost creeps 2.5 meter solid rock. And then in the spring when it starts to warm up, the soil moves and the joints go split off. Therefore, to build pipelines in the north of Europe compared with the south, it's totally different things. But still, there is a huge need of looking into the conditions, how the pipe is being built. If you go up north, Scandinavia, Norway, Sweden, Finland, you have to, the minimum depth is 2.5 meters. And then you have to make the insulation and gravel soil, etc., to insulate the pipe from the winter. So it is costly to dig down this minimum 2.5 meters. If you come down into the south, Spain, Portugal, Italy, then you very often find a pipe on a meter depth. But to avoid overloading from traffic, you have below the asphalt, you have a 30 centimeter of slab concrete. So to hit that pipe, to do some maintenance, to do repair work, it's very costly. But coming back again to the situation we have here, is infiltration. Infiltration is the #1 issue in Southeast Asia. Infiltration due to leaking joints, due to broken pipes, it's a big issue. And of course, this heavy infiltration causes many problems, but also capacity issues. If you look at the network we have in the country. Before we go into diameter and volumes, if you look at what kind of material are we dealing with in Malaysia. Nearly 80% of the sewer pipeline network is built up of clay pipes. Clay pipes is basically to have a fairly high corrosion resistant piping ground, but you also have a fairly brittle pipe. You have also joints very often, and joints is something which is a headache, especially when you come into areas where you have rainy season, dry season. When you have a dry season, then you have all the trees searching for water, and then you have roots. A root problem is a big and costly issue to deal with a lot. Then we have our RC pipes and other materials, but the main and the majority of the network in Malaysia is built up of clay pipe diameters. We have in this country roughly 20,000 kilometers of gravity sewer system. 20,000 kilometers. It's a huge amount of pipe. 20,000 kilometers, and every meter more or less you have a joint. That's many joints. So that's something to have a look at. These pipes and the network in Malaysia is not that very old. It's quite young, to be honest. The main part of the 20,000 kilometers are built out during the last 40 to 50 years. But as you can see, 50% roughly, or even a bit more, is small diameter, 2 to 5 or less. 2 to 5 or less, like we will find in many countries around the world. The diameter is small. Has disadvantage, but also advantages. I will give you for example, Spain, running since 18 years. It's one of the major businesses as tourism. You have cities just down the road from where I live, which has a population of 30,000 people, which is, how can I say, fixed population. But now in the summer, it is between 300 to 350,000 people living there, 10 times. So what has been done? The wastewater system, the water supply has to be designed for a population of 350 to 400,000 people. The wastewater pipes are bigger because they have to serve this amount of people. What happens in the winter when you have only 1/10 of the population living there? Circular pipes, the low speed of the wastewater, and in the spring you have problems because the pipe because you dry out, you get sediments, you get all these waste, and you get stuff, even if you're large pipes. Infiltration, also sand, is a big issue. But as we can see here from the network, the diameters of larger size, 600 and bigger, are not that very common. Condition assessment. Condition assessment is an extremely important part of the engineering process. Actually, at this point, you find out the condition of the pipe, of the network. Also, not only from the function in terms of transporting water, but also the economical value, the consequences if something happens. Like I said to you in my previous picture, the grade of that 900 millimeter sewer pipe was a grade 4, probably 5, but at least 4. But the risk assessment was done very low. Why? Because it was in the woods. No traffic, no bigger major problem, something happened. But when it happened, then you have a problem, because then you have an environmental impact. You have thousands of liters of wastewater flooding into the woods per second, and then you have now a contamination issue, which is a large problem. Maybe you don't have an issue like this with a flat street, but you have environmental. So, condition assessment and risk assessment, which I'll come back to, goes hand in hand. Extremely important to combine. And here it is knowledge. You have to understand what you read. You have to understand what you see. The assets we have under our feet, it's enormous. Especially if you look at bigger cities like Kuala Lumpur. How many population are you now? 7 million? 8 million something? Hidayat, do you know how many people are living in KL? KL. 7, 6, 7 million? About 4 million. 4 million? How many people was living in KL 50 years back when the network was, the basic was built? I don't know, half. Very less. And of course, the network has a value. The asset management of what you have in ground in terms of infrastructure. I mean, that's everything from wastewater, drinking water, gas, infrastructure, the electricity, communication, and so on, is that. But important is, where do we have our wastewater pipes? Yes, there are the infrastructure part, which is the deepest, below everything. You have to dig through cables for communication, cables for electricity, for gas, for water, and finally, after all that headache, you find the pipe for distributed wastewater.
But slowly they are coming next to us and also under of our pipes, because they don't have any more space.
But you still have a network you have to take care of. You still have an asset you have to take care of. You can't just say, okay, now we just forget about it, we just leave it there for the future. No, you're right, there are changes in the system. But very often it is forgotten, it is a huge value. And that's what we as normal citizens see, politicians see. We will invest into a beautiful park, because next year we have the election. That is what happened in Europe. Oh no, we build something beautiful on the surface. But then we have water leaks, that we have 50% of non-revenue water, that we have leaking pipelines for wastewater and for stormwater. That is very hard to get money for, because it's not seen. I have to say that I'm impressed, without taking any kind of political side, but when I'm here I read the Star. And quite often, when I open the Star, I see a full page of how do a sewer system work. True or not? You see the house, you see the network, try to explain what happens when you open the tap, what happens when you flush, or when you drain your water or your bath tap. It goes away. I have very self-important endeavor, to be honest, seeing it in a Spanish or a French or Italian newspaper. So I asked myself, how many of my neighbors, my friends, my family, taxpayers, do understand what happened when I opened the tap? We all, how can I say, judge every morning when I open the tap, water shall be there. But our flush toilet water should go away. That's it. And we are not really prepared to think about what does it cost. Here in Malaysia, you have a different system compared with Europe and let's say Germany. Here you pay for water in one bit and wastewater in another bit. In wastewater, it's difficult to get money for. I've said for many years, okay, it's a political thing, you have two different owners. In the water is owned by Minister of Finance and not the same owner as for the water supply, but combined bills. If you consume one water, if you buy 1 cubic meter of water, you have to pay for at least 1 cubic meter which is discharged. Simple as that. You need money for looking after your assets in ground for the wastewater. Inspection and investigation, as Denk has been giving us the presentation this morning, provide us with a lot of data. And this data has to be analyzed and also turned into a report, which people, management, the departments who hold the wallet can understand. It is something which I think the organizations we have around the planet and also now in Malaysia, I think this there we can actually get an understanding among